to the Z Exhibit.
What's up, guys? It's Andy Frisella.
This is your boy, Foul Munch.
This is Ryan Serhant.
This is Shingy.
Hi, it's Patrick David.
This is Sonia Sarvatani.
This is Director X.
Hey, everybody, I'm Forbes Riley.
Yo, this is Goldie.
This is Amberly Lago.
This is Chris Voss.
Michael Francis here.
Yo, this is Charlie Tuna.
Hey, what's up? It's Billy G.
And you're listening to The Run GpG
podcast.
Well, I'm going to go hang out and listen to David's next podcast from The Run GpG.
You might hear something you like. Peace.
Dane Cook is a stand-up comedian and film actor. He's released 5 comedy albums, including one of the highest charting comedy releases of all time. He's been called the first internet-made stand-up comedy star who grew a massive fan base online, which slingshot his career to Rockstar status, becoming one of the most prolific and popular comedians of the past few decades, selling out arenas and stadiums while appearing in a number of movies over that time. He's also known for his use of observational storytelling humor with a dynamic on-stage personality. We're excited to talk to Dane Cook about his life, his incredible career, some highlights, what he's doing now, and a lot more. Dane, it's an honor. Welcome to the Run GpG podcast.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, excited to have you, but we made it happen, which I'm excited about. You know, you are, as I was saying in the introduction there, you are one of the most iconic comedians of the past few decades, we can say. You know, my generation, our generation, you know, grew up with your comedy, your albums, your movies. So it's going to be good to hear a little bit more about your story and talk about your life and, as mentioned, some career highlights. But before we get into the meat of it, I want to unpack your actual comedy career, if that's cool. And I want to briefly set the stage and ask the question,
sure.
Who is Dane Cook? Where are you from? Where did you grow up? And maybe tell us what the young Dane was like.
So I was born in Cambridge, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. Grew up one town over, Arlington, Massachusetts. And I was a quiet kid. I was the opposite of the class clown. I was an introvert. I had a lot of social anxiety, and all the things that I think you need to catapult you into the very, very stressful world of stand-up comedy. But even though I had a lot of barriers early on in life, there was always this deep need to create and share those ideas. So I knew from a very early age that when I was in my comfort zone, when I could get away from fear and anxiety, that I was pretty much laser focused on the skits or the whatever it was that I was putting together in our household. I was going to create the best show to entertain my family. So there was a little bit of that early knowledge that I had some showmanship, but I just had to unpack a lot of BS to get from, doing it in the comfort of my home to a stage somewhere.
You know what's really interesting about that is I've heard you say that you grew up an introvert and somewhat shy. I've heard you say that. So what made you get into comedy?
It's probably, this is where it's like, I should be laying down. It's like therapy, but it's that thing of like, comedy is, it's an escape from trauma, from fear. Comedy is a great way to circumvent pain that you may feel is coming towards you, whether it's through bullying or perceived ideas that you project that other people might feel about you. Comedy is a great kind of safe haven. It's an escape. It's a safe haven. It's an armor. So for a lot of those, reasons early in my life, I found that I relied on comedy to probably distract from stillness and quiet and the ability to be really present with people. Comedy was a great put on, a facade, if you may, to buy me some time with the people that I was with, so they didn't see me as how I felt, which was lesser.
I think we do need that couch. I think we do need that couch to lie down on. But I've heard creatives say that quite often, right? It's somewhat of an escape. So at that time, you get into comedy, and I've asked you this before, and I'd like to hear it again. So, what comedians were you influenced by the most when you actually got into comedy? Like, who did you grow up listening to and watching?
I mean, there was a lot of stand-ups that I wanted to emulate, but it was the ones that were what I felt was fearless. I mean, I learned later in my career that, anybody who gets up on a stage has to have some fearlessness, but the ones that really would command a crowd and kind of take over, I felt like they were the bravest people that I had witnessed, usually on television or maybe old comedy albums that I got a hold of. George Carlin certainly was he was moving the needle throughout my young adult life. He was going through his own metamorphosis as an artist. And I kind of watched him go from these early ideas of being the hippy dippy weatherman to then kind of killing that character and letting his true process bleed into the comedy. But he was still outrageous. He could still do things that were so, not conventional. He could be political, and then a minute later, he could be doing something really irreverent and somewhat even childish. And I loved that. I loved that he allowed himself to be all of the things that he had experienced in that 1 hour of comedy. And I'm sure we'll get to it, but later in my life and career, 20 years later, his early work definitely influenced the people that I worked with and how I started creating and cultivating my brand and presenting it to my audience and hopefully new audiences that were checking in.
Yeah, it's crazy when you look at George Carlin. Like he was cerebral too. Looking back, he was very profound in a lot of ways. Emotional in some ways, right? So now here's what's interesting. You've been called the first internet-made stand-up comedy star. Did you know that? People have labeled you that?
I think I said it.
Yeah. Okay, well, maybe you labeled yourself. That's good because you were one of the first comedians to use a personal web page and MySpace to build a large fan base, which I find fascinating, really entrepreneurial at the time. In fact, you were described as, now check this out, you were described as alarmingly popular. Alarmingly, like it shocked people.
Right. Nobody more shocked than me.
Yeah, alarmingly popular during that era. And to this day, people still reference that, right? So can you tell us how you did that? Like, how did you grow your brand and ultimately your career on one of the first social sites ever? Yeah,
it was, well, kind of like going backwards. When I was about 2 years into realizing that social media was at that time a new portal, it wasn't the obvious kind of benign choice today that everybody is hopped up on and participating in. Back then, it was still it was like there was a new generation that was understanding the internet and logging into their various websites. And then there was like a whole lot of people that had no clue really what the digital realm was or was going to become. But I was into it. I was hip to the idea that this internet age was going to change commerce. I realized really quickly because even on the early versions of MySpace, when I had just maybe 10,000 followers before I hit several million, people would say, "Can I buy your item? Will you send it to me?" And so I'd be a one-man fulfillment center and shipping out, and people would like sometimes just send me the money or send me a check or like the honor system. But I was making I was paying the rent. I was paying, for my little, dinky apartment out here in LA by corresponding with people through the early version of MySpace. And then as it built and it grew to several million, it was like, oh, I'm writing my own narrative. I'm punching my own ticket, and I'm not waiting for the industry or somebody else to say, you're next. I was putting myself on the map. And when I kind of half joking, half truthfully say, yeah, I was the one to break through and do that, I was realizing in real time, nobody's doing this. I'm not even hiding it. I'm sharing the blueprint. I'm telling other comics. I'm going on morning radio. I'm saying, this is how you're going to become whatever you're meant to be without waiting for the machine to pick you up. So yeah, it was like I was the first one to the finish line in a lot of ways. And to this very day, it influences how I correspond, how I choose to kind of take that narrative and where do I want to go with it next, and how do I want to evolve 30 plus years into stand-up comedy. And it was from those early, trials and tribulations with social media.
Yeah, I think it's a case study. in that, like to this day, people talk about, replying to fans, responding, being approachable, consistent. That was something you did. I think that moved the needle probably on your career quite a bit because you were approachable and you were engaging. That's what people talk about in social media all the time. Like, how do you engage with the audience?
One of my tricks was, but one of the realities that I just realized pretty quickly was because of feeling so isolated as a kid and now having this popularity and finding ways to interact with people in my comfort zone because I was home. A lot of that, it wasn't like I was at a meet and greet or doing this at a seminar. I was able to very comfortably, like we're chatting now, be in a place of, very present, very down to earth. And I could be funny, but I could be mindful. I could be a lot of things because I felt a real trust. Why would anybody be engaging with me through this portal if they didn't want to be here? This is pre haters, like haters versus, like, this was when it was kind of like way more jovial and exciting to be a fan of somebody. Fandom was at an all-time high, and it was less about people coming in and rabble-rousing and wanting to just, drum up some attention by being the opposing, which is, par for the course now. That's part of the industry as well. If you don't have opposing and you don't have naysayers and rubbernecks that don't, like, you're not doing it right in a lot of ways. In that era, somebody could come in, get to know me, and I was realizing in real time, oh, it's about we. This isn't, look what I did. Look what I'm accomplishing. I could say those things, but the reality was, it was the people that I was finding through here that all my updates were about we. Everybody that was in that digital space, I made sure they felt a part of the street team, a part of the producing team, a part of the reason I was raising that flag up the banner, because it was a we experience. I think it's a mistake a lot of people make even to this day. They don't create a we environment. They create a look at me environment. And when you create a look at me environment, somebody's going to look, but they may not linger. They may not look too long. But if you create an experience where people feel emboldened and important to your journey, you might have a fan for life.
That's a mic drop moment. I hope everyone's paying attention to that, because that was some science. That was really smart. Now, I'm serious. That was a really good takeaway. Unbelievable. Now, I know you put the work in. I know this. I know your career. I know you put the work in, but it seemed like almost overnight you blew up. And the next thing you know, you were selling out stadiums and arenas. Like, what was the pivotal moment that did it for you? Like, can you pinpoint the moment, the slingshot that, when the rocket ship happened? Can you pinpoint it?
Well, it was, I wish I could say it was a slingshot moment, because the reality was there was probably forget about the fact that I started in 1990 and I pretty quickly was laying the groundwork in Boston, in New England, for at least regional success. What does that mean? Do a great show, and hopefully they hire you back in the next, semester. And low totem pole, I make a living locally doing local stand-up comedy. Okay. So I was really just padding my local regional tour map. And yet, the more I was doing these shows and putting my best effort into these shows, people were starting to call me from further away and saying, are you for hire to come to Vermont? Are you for hire to come over the border and come into, somewhere in Canada? And so then I, in the mid 90s, adopted this philosophy as, I'm not going to try to go anywhere until I'm invited. I'm going to stay in one place, and I'm going to grow so good at my craft in that place that the spillover, the word of mouth, will allow somebody to travel to another place and go, we should get that guy that I saw back in Boston here. And I did that for New York City. I did that for LA. Some people go too soon. They go to New York too soon. They're not ready. They go to LA too soon. They just languish out here. And I try to really enforce in young artists, in or out of comedy, be your best where you are until it's undeniable. And once you become undeniable at what you do at a high level locally, people will recognize that and want to bring you to their region, to their platform, to their stages. It works like that.
Right. So it's not a singular moment, but just growing locally and then getting some local recognition that.
But if I had to honestly pin it, it was probably building, and then I did Penn State, and I happened to be documenting it for an HBO series called Torgasm that I was on. And Penn State was supposed to be a 5,000 seat show. And about 2 weeks before the show, we got a call from the head of, entertainment marketing there. And they said, can we move this show to the field house? Because too many people want to come to the theater. And I said, how big is the field house? And they were like 14,000. I was like, how many more than the 5,000 are we at? And I think at that point, it was like 7,800. When we got to Penn State, and that episode is on there, you can see me arriving in my moment in real time. Because when I walk on the stage, it was like 12,500 people, and then more people continuing to come in during the show. So it was Penn State. And when I left that stage that night and left that show, I recognized that the wave was at its largest, and I could pretty much take it wherever I wanted to if I could stay as enthusiastic as I had been.
That's really cool. I didn't know that. As I was saying though, like, you became a rock star. Like, you became a rock star personality, like of my generation anyway, or certain generation, right?
But I never trashed a hotel room.
I don't believe it. I do not believe that, actually.
You don't receive rock star status until you trash a hotel room. Now, here's the fucked up thing. My mom growing up was a housekeeper, and she also just loved keeping a clean house. So I was probably the only rock star that cleaned my room for the housekeeper before they came in.
Wow. A respectful rock star. But like, that's the way I remember you from then when you were doing the Madison Square Garden. Like you were this big, larger than life personality as a comedian. And the question I wanted to ask is, and I talked to creatives and successful people about, manifesting vision, whatever. Have you always had a big picture outlook? Like, did you know you were going to become a rock star? Did you have that?
Well, I don't know if I thought of it as rock star, but I knew that I was in it for the long haul, and I had kind of put it out there and shared with people closest to me, like, I'm not doing this to be kind of funny or go halfway. I'm doing it because I want to be the best at this for my generation, and I feel like I can and could be that if I'm willing to do the work and evolve and grow. I think if I had to kind of put it under put it on the screen, it's about self-actualizing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you have to, in your ruminating, in your meditating, in your prayer, in your process, you have to see and believe yourself. The only way you can do that is if you remove your own so that when your meter is picking up everything else in the outside world, it's not thrown off by the fact that you've got a clean house as well. You have to live in your truth. So if you want self-actualizing to come to fruition, then the catch is you can't be false. People will sense it. People will detect it. And people might hang around for a little bit, but the truth is the most alluring thing you can put into anything in this world. And if you put your truth into your art, whether they like you, kind of like you, love you, adore you, check in with you, the truth will always be alluring to that person, and they'll want to spend some time with you from time to time.
Authenticity trumps all. Now, I've also heard you say this. I've heard you talk about being a lone wolf or being isolated in a way because you hit the stratosphere at 20 years old. Did you feel alone when that happened? And also, can you talk about, like, maybe, not to get, too emotional here, but the loneliness and hardships that come with, like, insane success like you had at a young age?
Well, it's like there's two sides to that, and it's a tricky question to answer because on one side, yes, it's very isolating because when you're achieving a pipe dream, people around you tend to not know how to communicate certain things, or they think that there's a lot of beliefs that people have about the person that's becoming success. Oh, you won't have time for me. I didn't want to bother you. I don't want to. So for a myriad of reasons, it can be a bit of a lonely journey on one side. I was prepared for it because I was very good at being alone. I was comfortable at that point in being alone. And I had the digital window. So I never felt really like desperately alone because I enjoyed my work and my communication with fans through the internet. On the other side, when you're becoming the belle of the ball, there's a lot of people that want to spend time with you. And so there was another entirely new element that nobody gave me the playbook for, which was, what is it like to be the in that moment? Like, you know, what do you have access to? Where do you want to go that maybe before you wouldn't have been invited to, but suddenly every door is going to be open to you? Or there's certain cool people that you like, and now suddenly they're fans of yours and they're inviting you into their world. And so the cross-pollination from reaching a high level is exciting. It's thrilling. And yet it can be a little bit lonely on a fundamentally down home basis, because a lot of people are seeing this new version of you that they perceive as a new version. And you kind of have to relearn how to cohabitate with people. And a lot of times that's strictly because of how they perceive you having changed. I don't feel like I changed a lot. I feel like I was still like a jeans and sneakers guy. I had a couple of things that like I had my eye on that I wanted to, you know, spend a little bit on or you know, kind of take myself on that shopping spree. But truly, I was most enticed by reinvesting back into the work, back into the brand, back into the business of show. And I also, once I had access to that kind of inner circle, then it was the quest of how do you stay in? How do you, you know, change your narrative? What is the zeitgeist? Who's really in control of what? And how can you continue to use what we're doing here today to create your own paths? You know, whether that's financially, whether that's messaging, whether that's therapy, whether that's, whatever dynamic that it is that you want to share here. So it continues to be a fascinating kind of parry thrust with the way the industry changes and the way you grow and change and your audience. And what do you provide and what do they then get in return that keeps us all wanting to stay on the journey with each other?
Yeah, that's incredible. And it's actually really interesting. You know, you talked about that shy, introverted, you know, kid from Cambridge, right? And then, you know, at 20 years old, you're the next Steve Martin, they say, right? So it's got to affect your ego at some point, right? So, or something, you know, it's got to affect the way you, like you said, you didn't change, which is really cool, but other people's perception would change, right? So,
well, I mean, it does affect the ego. It affects a lot. There's certainly a lot of things that get kind of triggered because you're then sometimes, then there's people that say want access to you and they're nefarious. You know, They wouldn't have wanted you when you were a quote nobody, but they want a piece of you now. They want to be on your pullout, you know, coattail. They want to be whatever it might be. So you have to then go through the spanking machine of the industry in life, because now certain people want you for absolutely the wrong reasons. Some people are wired and programmed to take. They're takers in this world. They're not all villainous, but sometimes they're just not thoughtful and mindful people. So you do have to start putting on a more assertive, no mentality, because if you don't, your boundaries are going to get trampled. And when you do that, when you lay those boundaries down and you start becoming your own gatekeeper of who really should get close, well, then that can piss off people that are genuinely there with love and meaning, because now they're being halted. But it's part of the process of trust and letting people, you know, giving people your power and so on and so forth. So for all those reasons, yes, you have to become this other thing to protect yourself, but you still at your core need to get back to the essence of who you are, quite simply as a human being and not a performer or not anything else, just a kid who grew up and does what they love. And how do you get back down to communicating that message to people?
but over that time, did you have a mentor? And if so, did they, like, along the way, did you have anybody that helped you with that? Yeah. Mentors, did they help you along the way? What did they teach you?
I did. I've had a few people, man, that, you know, really touched my heart and gently kind of guided me towards a better version of myself. And I would say more than anybody was my high school drama teacher, Frank Roberts. He sadly passed away some years ago. But that man was the first person outside of my family that was very honest with me, honest about the world at large, honest about where I was at that point in my abilities to entertain people. He watched me on stage during our class and then in some of the plays that he cast me in. And not only that, but we just created a friendship to where I spent a lot of time during school with him discussing art, discussing philosophy, discussing, self-actualizing, inwardness, all that stuff. And for a lot of reasons, I'm where I am today because of the love and the craft that Frank Roberts had experienced in his life and then shared with me.
Yeah, that's cool. It's important to have. I always like to ask that question of successful people.
Thank you. Thank you for asking it because I get to acknowledge him enough. So Frank Roberts, thank you.
Shout out to Frank Roberts. Over that time, you released 5 comedy albums, including Retaliation, which debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200, which was the most successful comedy album debut since Steve Martin's A Wild and Crazy Guy in 1978. It went gold 6 days after its initial release and eventually went double platinum. That time, I feel like it was the golden age of comedy albums. That's the way I feel. I could be wrong, but what are your thoughts on why your albums were so popular and what does it mean to have that distinction as one of the greatest comedy album releases of all time?
It's amazing. It's an honor. It still speaks to the kid inside me that listened to a lot of comedy albums and just, imbibed on all things stand up. So it's exciting to have my name, in those conversations and recognized in that way. I think that first of all, they're funny. They work. They make people laugh. And to this day, people can put on any of those albums and they have a timelessness, which I wanted at the time. I didn't do a lot of news of the day stuff. I didn't want really to do too many things that I felt like cemented it at a time, as opposed to what I thought great storytelling could be, something 20 years from now or whenever that, real human emotion mixed into that narrative is appealing, regardless of when somebody listens to it. But I think that if I got down to what I saw was missing, and again, I love talking about kind of the business, the talking shop side was the comedy album was considered dead because the comedy album was not being given any real care. They were cheap. They looked cheap. They were packaged cheap. There was no art on the cover. It was kind of like a silver disc and a jewel case, and they were boring. And I grew up with big vinyl album covers that made you want to stare at it. And there was a story being told there. So that was a lot of what I thought helped kind of resuscitate the comedy album, that not only was the content great, but it was something you wanted to have. You wanted to hold on to it. You wanted to read the liner notes and see what I hid on the album art. And maybe I drew the back of it on Harmful. And that was during the edit that I sketched the whole track listing. And I think the care that I put into the product made it more valuable to people, and more people wanted it for that reason.
Yeah, it was an interesting time with comedy albums. I mean, everybody had your CD. Everybody had it. It was a fun time. But it was also because we were coming out of that strange era where in the 90s comedy it was so oversaturated and poorly presented from Comedy Central, and some of the other places weren't giving it the same deep dive cultivation, and it just got a little lazy. I think that the comedy got a little lazy, the era, because the 90s was coming off this 80s boom where everybody wanted to be a major superstar now because of Roseanne and Robin Williams and Seinfeld, and it was like a glut. It was too much all the time, with not enough exceptional performers being kind of set apart from the flotsam and jetsam. And so for all those reasons, and by the way, it's going to happen again, and it always happens with every form of entertainment. It just was, it needed a jolt. It needed somebody new. It needed young, that next generation of people to come in and give it a spin for my generation growing up. And
I think I hit all the right, connected the right dots at that time.
Yeah, I think the timing was perfect. You showed up at the right time for a lot of us. Besides your insane success as a comedian performer, you have a successful movie career. You became an actor early on, right? You did. How did that happen? Like, how did you get into acting, and how does the experience as an actor compare to stand-up comedy?
It's a great question, and it's very different because stand-up is such a solo mission, and stage or television film it's a collaboration, and also you're playing a part for a director's vision. So for a number of reasons, I love it equally, but it uses a whole different side of your abilities. And also comedy is real time, no take two. I feel like a lot of my early movie career was just based on fans, directors that had grown up with my stand-up. Kevin Costner saw me do stand-up comedy at the Laugh Factory in LA. So by the time I sent my tape to Kevin, he was a fan of my stand-up. And then his words, he was like, oh, I was impressed that you put the kind of effort and passion that I've seen in your stand-up. He was familiar with my work ethic. And when he saw that I shifted it into something that was, more layered, he very quickly was like, you got the job. Let's get to work. So a lot of that just came from the, when you hit the zeitgeist and you're the talk of the town, you get a lot of incoming calls. Some of them are interesting and a little weird. And then a few of them are exactly what you want to put that try into next.
I'm surprised you never had a show. Like your guy, like to me, you need your own show. Like
we tried, man. That was one of the areas where it's like I had a lot of collapsing. For all the things that we could talk about here is like high watermarks. We tried, man. I had 2 pilots with Sony. Thanks to the great Russ Krasnoff, who was producing over there. He, after the first one just wasn't very good, he's like, let's give it another try. He brought in another, production team. So Sony and Russ were great, just didn't work. NBC and myself, we tried something. I think in hindsight, my stand-up at that time, which was really performance-based with writing, it was so broad that we couldn't quite figure out how do you shrink that down to TV. And quite frankly, I look back now and I'm like, I'm glad it didn't work, or I'm glad it didn't take, because I was still not ready and had not grown up enough to be able to really tap into the kinds of stories that I want to be able to share, which is heart and humor. At that point, there was a lot of humor, and I wanted people to know that other side of me, and I wanted to be able to have that be a part of story. And at that point, it was just really all like, what's funny? And I think maybe the reason why a lot of things didn't connect is they needed more heart.
Yeah, it's a totally different thing. I could totally see it. I mean, if you're doing a show, I mean, you're in this space like this big, right? Typically, and if you're a performer, like you were crazy. You were jumping on the stage and doing this and that. It's a different, completely different, dynamic. Now, what's interesting though, is you hosted SNL. You hosted Saturday Night Live. You were a 2-time guest alumni, correct? 2-time guest alumni. Yep. Not a lot of people on that list. So I need to ask you, what was that like? What was the experience like hosting SNL?
Well, we talked earlier about like, okay, what was the breakthrough moment? And then what was the validating moment? Hosting Saturday Night Live, getting a call from Lorne Michaels. It was about a week after Retaliation charted. It was like Jay-Z and me in that top 4 or 5. And I remember thinking to myself, like, oh my goodness, this now this is really gonna, go into some territory that I maybe wasn't quite anticipating would happen so soon. And I was in Vegas. I was at the Vegas Comedy Festival, and Lorne Michaels got my number and called me in the hotel room and said, "You're hosting." I remember I was like, "I am? When?" And he gave me the date, standing on the stage at Saturday Night Live, having watched, Martin Short, Billy Crystal, and Pryor, Carlin, Steve Martin. Everybody went through that turnstile. And for me, standing out there and reaching that, what I thought was the pinnacle, really. it gives me chills. When I think of it right now, I feel like I'm still there in it. I can recognize the feeling of this is where hard work can take you. Your hard work can take you to the door and then into the place that you've dreamed of arriving at.
So damn cool. Is there anything you know now that you wish you knew before you started your career? Like maybe mistakes, lessons learned, anything you can think of off the top of your head?
Well, I live my life feeling like nothing is falling apart. Things are always falling together. And even in some of my worst, dire capsizing moments, and I've had my share, even as a kid and growing up with, alcoholism and kind of dealing with early childhood trauma. I choose to look at even some of the, missteps as well. I needed to step in it to become, more empathetic or more, understanding, mindful, whatever it might be. I think that more than anything, it's such a great question because I'll tell you what comes into my heart when you ask it. It's always about time spent with people I love. It's always about, I wish there was a way that I could have realized sooner people like Frank, obviously my mom and dad who both succumbed to cancer right around that time when I had been riding on this enormous, wave. I think it always comes back to, I wish I had the ability to recognize how precious that time is and share more of it with those people. That's all. But, that's again, like, that's why day to day in life, you have to say your I love yous and recognize that it's as important as working out or proper nutrition or storyboarding your ideas is telling people that you care about them, that you need them, that you desire them, to let more people in and to be able to share your wisdom. I share my failures. I share my successes so that it'll hopefully inform somebody who is going to have their capsizing moment. It's not preventable, but then will they have the equation to realize it's for the best that I learned this lesson. It's for the best that I faltered so that I could find something that maybe wouldn't have been apparent to me.
Man, I love that. And I hope everybody's paying attention to what Dane said there. It's profound. I mean, when you get older and you look back, that just comes with age and maturity. You think about how precious time is and the sand in the hourglass, right? And as we get long in the tooth, as they say, Dane, we think about the stuff who we spending time with, right? You don't live forever. Yeah, it's true. So I appreciate that. I know we're going to talk about what you're doing now. You got some crazy stuff going on, a big special, which I want to unpack. But so far, I know you're in the middle of it, but so far, do you have a favorite career highlight?
Ooh, a favorite career highlight? Yikes. Well, I directed Troublemaker. That was my last special that we released in 16, 17. And it was so fun to, prepare it, write it, finance it, produce it, and then direct it, to get into that edit bay and to see this thing completed with everything from the first inception of my ideas to how it's going to be presented, the color, the sound mix, the font for the opening titles, getting Weezer, who I was a big fan of, to, provide a song. Like every element of that is the larger, truest, most organic version of what stand-up is, which is, I thought of something funny, I want to share it. I did, you laughed. And that's all you want to do on any given night as a comedian. So a special usually gets away from you. Sometimes there's other, people in that, production team, or maybe a network owns it, or somebody else is going to have some say, or that's too lewd. We want to cut that. That was seeing something all the way through it, 28 years into my career, that when I watched that, I'm like, this is exactly how I wanted this presented. I'm deeply proud of that. And I look forward to directing not only more of my own stuff. I didn't direct the one that I just finished, but I definitely will be directing more of my own stuff in the future. And even now directing outside of stand-up has been some of my most exciting mornings, waking up realizing, I'm at the helm of storytelling, but now on a greater scale.
Yeah, well, the way you describe it, like if you are a creative, it would be rewarding, right? To go through that process, right? Of kind of like picking the elements that you want, right? So as a true creative, I could see that. I've heard you talk about this too. I think it'd be good to get your perspective. Any advice you have for up and coming comedians off the top of your head?
You got to keep your integrity. You have to trust your gut. Your gut is gold. You have to be willing to weather the storms of the closing door is loud. It echoes. And you got to stay there. And you have to be ready, because the next time you pound on that door and it opens, you better have something to present that's well crafted and dynamic and speaks to your truth. So that starts with keeping your integrity. When you keep your integrity and you don't try to give the audience what you think they want, or give the manager in the back of the room or the producer or whoever that might be, when you bring people into what it is that you're passionate about, you're setting yourself up for wins. If you are bending your integrity, trying to be malleable to something else that isn't quite where you want to be or how you want to be positioned or seen, but you're going to give up a little bit of that integrity for the possibility of popularity, then you're setting yourself up for forward momentum in the wrong direction. You may win, but you might look back down the line and say, man, my authenticity is murky. And the worst thing is when you try to get back to that authenticity, and now people know you as something that you've presented entirely different, and you want to change the narrative to, no, but this is who I really am. So to all the comedians that are taking that mic out for the first time or first several times, keep that integrity, speak from the heart, cultivate your ideas, and always, always, always end that show on a real great laugh, or something that you feel like is, they call it like working out an impact rep. The last rep is the most important, because muscle memory. Always leave them wanting more, with your strongest desire in your messaging that you want to share.
That's awesome. Are you a new real estate agent or thinking about getting a real estate license? If so, you're going to want to ask about the Greater Property Group's Agent Scholarship Program. Why pay for the cost of the course yourself when the Greater Property Group will subsidize the cost for you? Make sure you reach out and get all the details on the Greater Property Group's Agent Scholarship Program. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to unpack what you're working on now with the exciting special you're working on in 1 minute. But first, I do want to ask you about, you've gone through a lot of different, incarnations of career, acting and in stand-up comedy and the albums. And I know you've been, retrospective, introspective lately. What do you enjoy most about where you are right now, professionally and personally?
I think that I'm most excited in year 31 that I'm as curious and as I feel like I'm as new as I felt then, because I'm always allowing myself to try something new and to hopefully add new elements to my performance, whatever it may be. So I still wake up just as it's as glamorous, the world of stand-up comedy, as it was when I started. But now, being the old bull on the hill, I feel like I can speak from a place of greater understanding. I feel like I can share more. I could talk about wins in the win column, but I could also, with great confidence, tell you about where I was at my lowest, or made the wrong move entirely, or was misinformed. And the fact that I can share my power in that way, and I'm okay with however you receive it, that makes me feel the most enthused, because I remember that kid who was so scared of his truth and who I was and how I look to people and how do people like me and do I even like me? I remember how convoluted that all felt as a kid. So to still have the same fantastical imagination coupled with the confidence to not only love myself, but then to share with you the things that are important to me, highs or lows. That's not a bad way to start the day.
I like it. That's interesting. Okay, so tell us about the special. Tell us about the new special. What's going on? When can we expect it? What are you working on? Because I know you put a lot of time and work into this now.
This is, I cleared the room a little bit, but we were watching on the screen here a version of the rough assembly of the edit. I know it's my best work to date. I think it harkens back to the size of Vicious Circle or Rough Around the Edges, but I think it has that same breakthrough element to it as harmful, and yet it has all the things that I wanted to add: the maturity, the introspection. That's something I wanted in there. I wanted the LPMs with introspection. What does that mean? Laughs per minute, with still allowing people into the deepest parts of both winning and losing, or failing and succeeding. And so for all those reasons, aesthetically, it's gorgeous. The team that I still don't want to say who directed it, but the people that I worked with are top caliber people. And I know it's the most beautiful stand-up special that anybody is going to see, maybe in the last 15 years. So for all those reasons, I'm excited to finally put it out there in the world.
Wow. And when can we expect it?
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to have a screening out here at my agency in a couple of weeks. We've got most of it done. There's a couple of things that we're toying around with, but then we'll bring everybody in, buyers. And another thing, talking to young artists, you want to own your IP more than ever. Your intellectual property. If you can make something yourself, you can pay for it yourself and then copyright it yourself. And it's more than ever an absolute to create it and then share, as opposed to like somebody's going to come in and pay for it for you and be your partner. But that means in perpetuity, you might not even have control of your own image or your own content. That's very tricky. It's a slippery slope. So I did it all in-house, and nobody has seen it except for a couple of people, obviously the crowd that was there and my production crew. But I'm chomping at the bit to finally start showing it to all the streamers and some of the people that have been calling and asking to be a part of the screening.
Man, I can't wait. I can't wait. I can't wait to see it. I'm excited
Thanks,
about it.
Man.
Personally,
thank you.
honestly.
That means a lot. Appreciate it.
Dead serious. And when that happens, we'll make sure we re-edit the show notes and put the link in there or something to get it.
Cool.
I'm excited about that. Okay, so here's a question. What do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? Oh my gosh.
What do you do for fun? We're in the personal development section here.
Well, I have a Rhodesian Ridgeback puppy, and she's about 1.5 years. My girlfriend and I probably spend more time. Well, I have another dog, Chopper, who I've had for about 6 years, and we're real homebodies, man. My girl and I, we like to, we're like, we'll binge watch. We just went all the way through Ozark. We're about to start Yellowstone. Mm-hmm. We're watching Open Range with Josh Brolin. I think that the one thing that has remained since I was a kid all the way till now, having just turned 50, is I love entertaining the masses. And then I love that meditation of not needing anything more than just home. I don't chase anything. There's no party over there that I want to be at, or, my girl and I love to create, cultivate, and then we like to enjoy that. In other words, we're boring. We have our game nights. We have a few people over for game night, but we like to keep things pretty mellow. And I like that dichotomy of being able to go out and do extravagant, large scale shows. And then nothing makes me happier than couch surfing and having a Sunday fun day with my girl.
It sounds fantastic. I like it. We're roughly the same age. What'd you think of Boba Fett?
I like it. I personal preference. I always loved the tone of Empire Strikes Back, and I wish that these shows could even be a little bit darker. I wish that they would allow some of the storylines to dip into things that are right a little bit more.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, Empire Strikes Back was the best one because it was dark. But
the show looks incredible.
Yeah.
The people working on the show and the effects and the way they make these shows, it's like they're gorgeous. They're awesome. They really are amazing.
Okay, here's a question, Dane. Last two questions. If you could have dinner with any 3 people in history, past or present, who would they be and why?
Elvis Presley, why not? Right? It's like, are you kidding me? What he experienced and how he experienced it. Yeah. So that's an easy one. Past or present, I wish I could have a dinner with my mentor, Frank. I wish he could have seen me finally come to a full realization. He saw me as that kid who still had a lot of fear in him. So I miss Frank, and I wish that I could break bread with Frank one more time. And then probably have to be like, I don't know, maybe somebody who's like, I want to have another dinner with Steve Martin.
Yeah.
He's so busy these days, but it's like, come on, Steve, hit me up. Let's go out again.
Wow. So what a dinner table that would be. It forces you to think. I like that question. It's a fun one. Now the word legacy, we've been hearing from a lot of influencers, creative celebrities, successful entrepreneurs. Now, what is your legacy? Like when all's said and done, what does the Dane Cook legacy look like to you?
Wow, man. I mean, I definitely feel like a big part of that is going to be the comedy, right? The comedy that hopefully people will enjoy for, I don't know, for however long. Number one, it would be comedy, but I definitely am grateful, very grateful that, whether it's Clubhouse or TikTok or Twitter Spaces or whatever it might be, I can appreciate that people come to me, and they come to me all the time and say, like, how does this work for me? What is the thing that I'm missing here, that I have this tool, but something's lacking? And I love that people look at me as a person that came through that early incarnation of this digital age as one of the kind of early pioneers of what worked, what didn't work, and where it's come to. It's great to be bringing the next incarnation of my stand-up and using now all of it.
Yeah, I love that. Dane, my man, what an awesome interview. I really appreciate you taking time with us today. I did it with 2 minutes to spare. I did it. I'm a master. I'm a professional podcaster. I got to know you a little bit, just on the social channels and whatnot. Right. I think you're one of the most passionate, articulate, intelligent, funny dudes I've ever had a conversation with, for real. So I really appreciate you and all you do. I'm really looking forward to what's next. I'll be paying close attention and to get your perspective on your career and what's happening. Where do you want the people to connect with you? What do you want you want them to follow you on social, etc.?
First of all, I appreciate that, man. And I would love to make sure that once the special's out there, then we can kind of sit down and talk about the hows and whys, because I think that it's going to move the needle in terms of what in a stand-up comedy special should be. So I look forward to talking more about that with you once it's out in the world. All my socials are the handle Dane Cook. I've been doing a lot more on TikTok because I like the live feature on there. So I would say primarily find me on TikTok. If you want to back channel chat with me, that's still Instagram, and then DaneCook.com.